All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here today with a very good friend of mine and somebody that I have admired for my entire professional career for all of the things that she is amazing at, Kim Kreuzberger from Pivot Projects. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to reintroduce myself, Allie Wyatt, co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. We do a LinkedIn Live series where we interview incredible professionals and executives and that have had storied careers, and they have so much to share with you by way of learnings. We also just launched our 10th house private membership community cohort yesterday for fall. It was our orientation. We have so many amazing founders at every stage of their business. And we are now starting to accept our cohort applications for January of 2023. So definitely go in and check that out. And just know that we won't be admitting you and have orientation until 2023. If you're wondering if you've already applied or if you want to apply. I'm excited to dive in though, because I have a lot of questions for Kim and I know she has a lot of knowledge to share. I'm going to give you a quick bio because she has quite the extensive career. So before she helped launch one of the most industry changing wellness brands, Goop, Kimberly was packing in 14 years of valuable experience in publishing. And with her foundational experience of working with celebrities, Kimberly built Goop from the ground up as the CRO in just 4.5 years, raising more than $100 million in brand backing, increasing the staff by 16 times, which is insane, and has doubled the wellness brand's publishing revenue year over year. Her work with celebrities include Gwyneth Paltrow, inspired Kimberly to start her own full service agency, Pivot Projects, offering everything from marketing to operational services to brands such as Cravings by Chrissy Teigen and Frenshe by Ashley Tisdale and Magic Mike by Channing Tatum. In addition to all of the success, Kimberly is an advisor for our one-on-one advisory platform, The North, where she supports female founders and guides them towards their building and scaling goals, all while working towards gender equality for women in business. So with all that she does, I'd love to actually hone in on Pivot Projects and have you tell us a little bit about what it is and the services you offer to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. After leaving Goop, as Ali said, after 4.5 years, I felt like pull in the market between talent access and operators and brand operators. And I wanted Pivot to kind of sit right at that intersection and help supercharge some of the talent-led businesses. And that was in 2019. And it's been about 3 years. So we have the agency side of the business. And then most recently, we have Cravings by Chrissy Teigen, who I've been with for about 2.5 years. I've leaned in as the CEO of that brand and a board member, and I'm really proud of all the work we're doing there. So I'm excited to share more details about the operating engine, the recruitment of talent, and how we continue to market these brands in today's economy.
And Kim, one of the things that I really admire and that we talk a lot about, frankly, is that you manage many accounts and brands at the same time. So much of what you do relies on your team to run the entire operations without you. How do you think about delegation and performance management to ensure that your team are keeping clients happy? Are there any like systems or processes or tools that you rely on typically to help manage those accounts?
Yes, I think part of my role is to make sure, I think all of us as founders, recruiting operators is probably our number one challenge. And great operators that we can delegate to, that we can trust. And I read something recently that was basically you have to deepen the relationship you have, whether it's your operators or people in your life or your network. And so it's important to me that anyone we recruit as an operator, I think you have to really show as a manager that you care about them and you support them. And I think we're all moving so quick. It's easy to delegate the project, move on and kind of sink or swim. And I think for us to be successful as founders, it's onboarding and properly onboarding and managing what that scope is, creating process, whether it's Slack, whether it's a one-on-one with the client, whether it's a one-on-one internal meeting, So I think for the purpose of everybody on this call, it's really thinking through not only finding the best people, but creating the strongest processes, creating systems, and structure. And I think without any of those things, your team will fail, you'll fail, because ultimately for you to be successful, you have to relinquish control and you have to put the client or the customer first. And so those just require a level of delegating and recruitment. That's really where you as a founder should be spending your time.
Kim, can you talk a little bit about your recruitment process, like how you think about looking for great talent? Because you're right. I think it's really hard at times. You can go out and recruit, but you never know, what their actual, if they have the skill sets that really they're saying that they have, or how good on a relative basis those skill sets are, if you'll actually be able to entrust them with your very precious work and clients.
Yeah. I tend to be hands off. Once giving that really clear direction, really clear scope, that onboarding process, I kind of do let people really strive or fail. But I think most importantly, you have to be there for them. So I think there's a level of communication. I think you want to be hands off, but I think they have to know, one, like I said, that you really care about them and your focus is on helping them succeed. And if that is truly your focus and where you're putting your energy and they feel safe, I think then people will be set up for success. And listen, I've been burned. We all have. You test, you trial. It's not an easy, but I think something I've learned is instead of maybe committing to a full-time position or a really high retainer, is there a way that you can crawl, walk, run into that executive position? Because as a founder, it's a big risk. It's expensive. It's an expensive mistake. So I think, is there a version where they could come in on an hourly basis and you test some small project and then you go for a bigger project, or then you do a monthly retainer. And then if you find success over 6 months, you can offer a full-time position. So I think it's kind of really filtering through what are the ways that you can partner with someone that mitigate risk. And you as a founder are the only person who can really kind of create that structure.
And when you talk about onboarding, because, and this is just a little background for everyone, Kim has sent me these really robust decks that she's done for people that she's bringing on board in every area of her life, right? From personal to the professional side. What are some of the sort of documents or things that you've provided to create comprehensive onboarding so that when people join, they know what's expected of them?
Yeah, I think every stage of business and client is going to be different. But I think most importantly, you have to always know the goal of the client, right? Like on the agency side, or the goal of your customer and what you want to achieve. So you have to start there. And for me, knowing the client goal and then building backwards is kind of critical. Like, what do they need to be successful? What do they need first? The prioritization. And I find when you hire freelancers or contractors, you can't just say, oh, we're going to do a 3-month strategy. I think it's providing value and ROI. And if you can find that balance as a contractor or as a founder when recruiting, it's like, how can you find someone who's thinking through strategy and bringing value, but at the same time, providing immediate ROI? And I know that, Allie, that doesn't perfectly answer your question, but I think...
No, but I think it actually tees up the next one, which is about KPIs, right? And in order to set somebody up for success, it sounds like you're saying you need to know the goals, right? And they need to know, what does success look like for me within the organization or for the clients themselves. So when you're reviewing each account, how do you determine KPIs? How do you look at your numbers, and at what frequency do you review them? And especially for new businesses, how do you think about financial forecasting?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there. But I think first and foremost, when thinking about rate and the right client, I think there's a whole vetting process. I think all of us are moving so fast, and sometimes you're just taking on clients because you need cash flow, which we all understand. Then there's creating a vetting process around when to say no. Identify the client that's not the right fit. My husband always says, squash the beast when it's small, or squash the monster when it's small. When you see some of those early signs, they're calling and texting a lot. You haven't even gotten the scope of work out the door. It's like you have to be really thoughtful of like where your bandwidth exists and what the client needs, and making sure there's a real marriage there. So saying no is really important. If the signs are there, and we all know the signs, then there's a level of undervaluing your business to get the account, right? So I know we're talking about a lot of things, but there's a level of you need to be able to pay yourself. And so when the client is coming to you with this intense scope of work, it's really important that you're building. I think that where I spend the most time is developing structurally the resourcing required to be successful, tied to that scope of work, and then managing to a margin. Because you could be killing yourself for this client and resourcing it appropriately and somehow make no money. And anyone who has an agency knows that's happened. So, but at the same time, if you are going to charge a premium to that client, then you have to deliver 4 seasons value. I don't know how to say it, but you like in a better way, but if you're going to charge a premium, then your services and your final product need to be extraordinary. So all of these things are factoring when developing the resourcing, the operators, the margin, the scope of work, and really determining, can you deliver value? At what expense? At what margin? Can you make money? And I think these are all the vetting process that I know part of being of the North is I'm talking to a lot of women now, and they need help with that. It's not as easy because you have to have a contingency plan. You have to carve out 10 to 15% for resourcing that you didn't expect the client requires. And I want to keep this broad because not everybody has an agency, but these are just things that, after 20 years of being in business, you'll get better at. And I'm here to help, and you're here to help, Allie. But I think it's easier said than done. But
I think you do bring up a good point on pricing, right? You can choose to be a premium model, but then like you said, you have to bring a premium product to the table. You can't raise prices just because you're looking at your operating margins and it doesn't work, or maybe you're not making money. You might want to rethink your service model, right? And offer different services that are perhaps higher margin if you are a service-based business. And also, I think that a lot of the same goes for a product business, right? Where if you are you're offering a premium price product, then you have to be ready to deliver a premium product. I think going sort of back to the question, the other aspect of it was around sort of financial hygiene. So looking at your numbers as a business owner and forecasting out. And I know that you have a pretty rigorous process of doing that. You're always looking at your numbers. I'm actually really surprised to see a lot of the time our founders will not necessarily even have a model that they're looking at. So can you speak a little bit to that? And I know that you work with a wonderful outsourced CFO firm, but how do you think about it as a business owner and as the CEO?
Yeah, I think if you are a founder or a CEO, you are also the CFO. So you have to move the delineation. Yes, you have a CFO or you have a director of finance, but you will be dead in the water if you don't know your numbers like the back of your hand. And I know that's not intuitive to everybody. And there's a lot of like, that's not my superpower. That's not my strength. But you don't have a business if you can't protect your margins, if you can't build a bottoms up scope of work with operators, value, rate, margin. If you are not paying yourself, a lot of, I meet with a lot of founders who want investment. And the first question I said, like, what is your plan to pay yourself and how do you pay yourself? And there's a lot of like, that's not my priority right now. I'm year 2, it's a really modest salary. Like I'm investing in women that want to make a lot of money and that want to pay themselves and have a clear value of their worth. And I think you just have to be careful that you don't get caught in this hamster wheel because it could be years and decades of building and not properly monetizing your value. And, everyone's in a different life stage, but, it's important that you prioritize that. Life goes fast. And all of a sudden, you don't want to wake up and be like, wow, I went 4 years without actually paying myself. Like, that's not okay. That's not the business you meant to be in, or you're not profiting fast enough. But the other thing is you can't walk around and I need to raise capital, but you don't know your EBITDA, the back of your, yeah. You have to know all of those numbers, whether or not it's your superpower, or surround yourself, I love the team at Palm. I love full stack finance. I work with an incredible CFO on Cravings. Like, though, you have to be lockstep. So take that out of your head that like that's not my superpower. That's what I'm good at, because you won't be successful if don't make that your priority.
I love that. And I think so often as women, we forget to make it our priority. And we're so busy sort of taking care of everybody else that we forget. It's almost like the oxygen mask concept as a parent, right? Like you have to put it on yourself, because otherwise you're going to be of no help to anybody else. And so you also have to look out for yourself. And self-care is also paying yourself, right?
Yep.
And valuing yourself. So I love that. And I think the other point of that, right? If you've gone 4 years, 5 years and not been able to pay yourself, and the business doesn't allow for you to pay yourself, maybe you have the wrong model. Maybe you need to switch things up. Maybe you need to pivot. So I think you bring up really important points that a lot of times people don't acknowledge for themselves. I want to go to you working with so many different brands, because it's a lot to manage. And also you work with a lot of different businesses. So you have the benefit of being able to see across the landscape. What are some of the key resources that you feel different brands and businesses need? And can you hear me? Because you're frozen. Uh-oh. We lost her for a second. Maybe we can also take this opportunity for some additional questions. Oh, there you are. So did you hear what I said? Were you able to hear me? So I was saying, so you have the benefit that you have a lot of knowledge across different brands and businesses. So you can see what are those patterns, what are the commonalities. So my question for you is really, what are sort of those key resources or things that you see that across the board most brands or companies need?
Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. But whether I'm advising or investing or operating, I think there's a level of, we all know this, like, how do we lower CAC? How do we acquire customer? How do we build audience? I think all of us are looking for ways to cross-pollinate. And I think a lot of times as a business, we stay really siloed on the path and try to do a lot of this ourselves. And I think it's important as a founder that you're thinking of, who else has an audience? Who else has a retail door? Is there a shop and shop? And knowing your value proposition, can you bring value to that other business? And be really clear with your value. Doesn't necessarily that you have as big of an audience. Like I know at Goop, when weighing collaborations, we were really looking for people who had similar size audience so we could all scale together. But there were also incidences or examples where people had a high HHI customer that we wanted to acquire, or had a younger demo that we wanted to acquire. So I think really knowing your clear value proposition, and is there ways of partnering or collaborating or creating sweeps or shop and shops that help you access audience and minimize cost. And then and you can't do any of this partnership without understanding what their goals is. I think a lot of time as a founder, you're so excited about your idea that you're like pitching. Oh, we have this newsletter, we can do this partnership. And I think you have to take a step back. Like, what does the brand that you want to partner with really need and value? And then what do you have? And how do we find that collaboration point? And how do you then talk about that? And that as you're offering and reverse engineer, and not just get so excited to pitch. And I think that for all founders, and I see when raising capital, there's a lot of enthusiasm. Me, here's what I need. And I do think everyone needs to take a step back and focus on what would be mutually beneficial. How do I develop first a relationship? What does the person on the other side of the table or phone need? And then build that pitch backwards. And I think it's just slowing down before we speed up.
And going to that point on relationships. So we talk about the importance of relationships all the time. And I know that, Kim, for you in building out your career, it's been absolutely essential to your success. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about relationship building for the purpose of hiring employees, for the purpose of transactional partnerships, or for the purpose of getting investors on board? You are such a true master of this, in my opinion, but it's also incredibly genuine and authentic, and you build relationships that are long lasting. So what are some of the ingredients for that?
Yeah, I think my philosophy is you have to be a giver. So
Yeah.
take out what you need, and you have to build deep relationships that matter to you. This isn't about transactional. I mean, the longer and deeper you go with people and the more you care about them and they care about you, the more likely you will at some point do business together. Because as we all know, genuinely people like to do business with people they like or they love. And look for commonalities, take interest in them. I think we're all moving so fast. It's really easy to think, who can I tap into? And I think you have to remove that. I think first and foremost, the approach of the relationship comes from a place of helping, not from your immediate need. Do they need an introduction? Do they need talent? Do they need, your career coach? Build that relationship first, and then everything else will come. And it does come back. I'm 20 years operating and building, and I feel like I've helped people get jobs. I do anything I can because it's the right thing to do. And I don't care if I ever cross paths with them. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I think that's what makes life interesting and fun and work fun.
And then it seems like it makes it much easier to then go out and make an ask when you are in that position, right?
Yeah.
Does it ever feel awkward if, it's somebody that you feel like is a friend, to go to and ask for things? Because I think that's something that we can all be better at. But I think you do it in a really beautiful way where it doesn't feel purely transactional at all.
That's
So
a question.
insight.
It's not intuitive for me to ask for help. Like if I needed a contact, I think I'd go to LinkedIn before I looked up the 10 people. But as a founder, and it's probably one of my blind spots, to properly scale yourself, you need help. And you have to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. You have to identify your blind spots. So I think I need to take this advice as well. We do need to think through like our networks and building substantial networks and deep relationships. There is a level of purpose, or you're not going to move fast enough. It's hard because you have to build your network with the notion that you're always going to be hiring. You're always going to be looking for talent. You're going to be looking for customer. You're going to potentially need funding or money, like whether it's a partnership or a raise. But ultimately, your network needs to be bigger than you. It needs to be powerful. It needs to be creative. It needs to be successful. So I'm like taking my own advice that try not to do it all on your own. Try to tap that. But I think come from a place of first building the behemoth network, all from the place of being a giver, and then access who you need when you need them, and then bring value to them too, and think through that.
So next I want to go to, bringing value right to the clients that you have, but also you have launched some of the most extraordinary businesses and brands of today. And it really feels second nature to you to sort of come up with these revenue streams associated with them. But one thing I really admire about your approach is that you help your clients launch products and services that make the most sense for them, that aren't just following trends. So how do you think about that on behalf of your clients or the businesses? And how do you decide what products or services you should launch first?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is like the $1 million question, like, product market fit, customer opportunity, that we all probably struggle. I think for me, it's testing, testing, testing. I know that probably sounds like, we all know that, but you don't get it right the first time. And, part of introducing product is letting the customer tell you whether there's product market fit, whether this makes sense. And that comes with, a lot of times it's introducing maybe a marketplace first, seeing what people react to, then building the private label. But I think it's much harder than it looks. And when people hit that unicorn business, it's like we only see the headline. But let me tell you, it was a decade of testing and making mistakes and falling on their face. And so I think I think I love you for even saying, like, admiring me for finding client launch. But a lot of times I'm not building from scratch. So I admired a lot of you who are incubating the idea and building from scratch. A lot of times I'm partnering with somebody who has a nascent idea and I'm kind of providing the supercharged engine, which is different. And so credit to everybody out there who's finding that hole in the market and really incubating at like
Are
ground
there
zero.
certain things you think about though when you are sort of taking something that is that incubation stage, right? And then you're able to explode it and scale it. Are there certain things you think about on which products to test first or how to go about testing products? Because I think it's hard, right? Because it costs money, right, to test products.
Exactly. I mean, I think the marketplace is a great model while you're building a DTC, having whether it's, Cortina or Canal or off script, having one of these like marketplace models. So you actually have both going because you already have the customer. Is there a way to upsell the customer that you hadn't thought of? And
Yeah.
that's really, really low cost and low risk. Um, the other thing is talking to like if you have a CPG business, for example, what do the retailers need and what are their pain points? And can you solve that? And a lot of times I'm doing that at the same time and trying to understand where are they falling short, and then could I work with my client to develop something and reverse engineer that would solve their problems. So I think it's thinking through distribution and what is the end goal, and then can you develop backwards. But honestly, Allie, like it's the $1 million question. I mean, I think we're all trying to do that and sure we're spending efficiently while trying to do that and manage CAC, because building a business that you have to buy the customer for at a premium is not sustainable, and we all know that.
And then one last question for you, and I feel like I have a million last questions for you, but just to try to be as broad as possible, is there any sort of piece of advice or lessons that you've learned across all of the businesses that you've worked with that you would give to our founders that are struggling with things every single day and trying to reach either that unicorn status or just a status where success is something that is in their control?
Yeah, I think the only advice, because I think I struggle with this, is you have to stay focused. It's baby steps. It's not a marathon. It's crawl, walk, run. You have to lay foundation. You have to run your own race. It's not the race of your investors. It's not the race of your competitors. It's not the race of your advisors. You have to focus on your own business and your own tempo. And tempo is important because you have to know your limitations. Like, what is your long-term goal? Is it a unicorn business? Is it to enjoy life and make money? Is it cash flow? Like, all of these conditions factor into every decision you make as a founder and every decision around funding and partnership. So I just think, I know that's like convoluted, but I think it's so
No, I
easy.
think it's not convoluted. I think
You have one meeting, you get really excited, you start to shift the business a little. You have to stay clear with your focus, and you just have to follow your intuition and your path and not let a competitor or an investor skew that path. And that's really, really important.
I love that. Such great advice. Super helpful, Kim. So thank you for your time. And everybody, thanks for joining today. And again, definitely come into the 10th house and apply for our January cohort if you are not already. But otherwise, we will continue to share more insights from amazing women like Kim as we go.
And thank you, Female Founders Collective, and Find Your North. You can hit me up there. I'd love to take a meeting with you. And I'm excited, and I'm here to support everybody. And I write back to people on LinkedIn. So I know that's rare.
Yeah, she's amazing. I don't know how she finds the time. All right. Bye, everyone.
Good luck.